Hello everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 from 6 months ago. And I'm recording this on Thursday, March 28th, opening day, so I got my royal stuff on. And we're looking back at the list from September 28th, 2018. As always, this is just really about trying to see what we can learn from these books. Did they stay hot? Why might they have cooled off or continued to grow? And just kind of get an idea. One thing I want to talk about, I've seen a lot of people talk about, is what the CBSI Hot Top 10 is. And I'm just going to spend just a second on that. And it's really their opinion of they're looking to see what books are spiking and are doing things on eBay. And some people argue maybe they're trying to spike books themselves. Whether they're doing that or not doesn't really matter to me, because from what my perspective is, what we're trying to do is, the fact of the matter is these books did spike. Let's understand why. Let's understand what those reasons were, whether or not those were sustainable reasons, so that we can all make better decisions as we go forward in our purchasing, rather than chasing books that maybe we shouldn't, but also making sure that we are invested in books that we should. So with that, let's get into this week's list. And first up at number 10 is we have Spectacular Spider-Man 90, which is the third Black Chute issue. This is kind of 252 and Marvel Team Up all came out, and this one all came out basically at the same time. I think this might have been a week later. So this is kind of the third Black Chute issue. It saw a little bit of spiking with the release there of the Venom movie and everything else. This was near mint jump from basically a $10 to $15 book to a $25 to $30 book. So I think this is a book that maybe was getting a little bit less love than maybe it should have for being an early Black Chute appearance. So since then, obviously Venom has come and gone. Oh, and 9.8s at the time. Sorry, had jumped to 500 plus and then 600, which were more than double what 9.8s had ever went for this book. So this book was getting some love in the fall. So what's it doing now? Raws have come back a little bit. They're back now in that $10 to $20 range. But a really nice, near mint, high quality copy still can bring closer to $30. But most of them are going for $10 to $20. 9.8s are still going for $400 to $500. But the interesting thing here is a 9.8 is going to cost you $400 to $500. A 9.6 is going for $100 to $140, with several sales around that $125 mark. So there's always a big gap between 9.6 and 9.8, but this is a very significant gap. A 9.0 goes for basically $100 or a little less, but a 9.6 is going for, I think $80 to $90, but a 9.6 is going for just over $100 and can be had for $100 on occasion, whereas a 9.8 is costing you almost $500. If you're not a person that has to have the 9.8, this might be a book that at 9.6 might be the deal or the way to go. So that is number 10, Spectacular Spider-Man number 90. Next up is Giant Size Miss Marvel number 1, which is the first appearance of Chewie the Cat, also known as Goose in the Captain Marvel movie. When Goose made his appearance on the poster, and they found out he was going to be in the movie, or the cat was going to be in the movie, this book jumped to a $40 book. Since then, the movie has come out. Many people would argue that Goose is the star of the movie, or maybe the best part. I don't know about that, but he's definitely one of the better parts of the movie. And so now this book has not... there's only been a couple of recent sales of Raws are still going for that $30 to $50 range, fairly consistently. So it was going for 40. It's still right in that same range. In terms of slabs, there aren't very many slabs on the census. Most people had never slabbed this book until recently. There's only been 2 sales. They were both for 9.6s, and they went for $130 and $215. I haven't seen any 9.8 sales at all on this book. The only slab currently listed is a 9.4 for 80 plus that's on auction. It currently was at 81 plus shipping. So not sure where this book's going to land on the slabs, but given that it's still a $30 to $50 book, if if you can find a nice raw copy, if you're one of those that likes to slab books and get something out in front, now would be the time, because I don't know how long this train is going to last as you move away from the movie. And it is the first appearance of a cat. People love cats, but can't see it having super high value for a long time unless they continue to use the cat in future movies. At number 8 on the list is X-Men Legacy 252, which if you're like, what the heck is that? That is the first appearance of Endgame, and no, doesn't have anything to do with the Avengers movie. This was basically Donny Cates in a conversation mentioned the name Endgame, and people, which may have been related to the movie, because this was before people knew what the title of the movie was going to be, but people assumed that he was talking about this character and that he was going to use him, and this book went from a dollar bin book to a $15 to $20 book overnight because Sir Kate said so. That's as Comic Tom would call him. Amazes me how people have reacted to his conversations and just jumped on things and caused things to spike. Donny Cates is a phenomenon right now, and people seem to be trailing after, hanging on every word he says. So this book, like I said, went from $1 to a $15 to $20 book. Now it's still going for kind of a similar range. It's more of a $5 to $15 book. Typically right around $10 is what this book can be had for on eBay. To me, if you really want this book, this is a book I'd be diving in dollar bins for, because I doubt most shops have pulled this out to try to get value out of it. I'm not sure it's going to go anywhere in terms of that, but yeah, I don't know that I would pay much for this book, but that's to each their own, because so far Donny hasn't actually followed through on his little mention of Endgame. And number 7 on the list is Dr. Aphra, number 24, the Reese Boba Fett variant, and this is a book that spiked simply because of a cool cover. And we talked about these a little bit in my cover videos on my Collecting Smart a little bit. I think I actually brought this one up. This one, back then, right out of the gate, was going for $15 to $20. Since then, this book is maintained fairly well. It's a $10 to $15 book. So for just a regular variant, $10 to $15, that's pretty good for a variant no older than this. It is a cool cover. 9/8, if you want one, can be had for that $40 to $60 range. So I think this book is still fairly hard to find. Dr. Aphra is not a book with a huge order, but it does have a following, and these are out there. So that is Dr. Aphra number 24. All right. Next up is, and I need to stop saying next up, I need to find something else to say, is X-Men number 134. And this is First Dark Phoenix, and this coincided with the trailer dropping. And basically, this very fine raw copies went from going for $30 to $50 to $100. And 9.8 jumped to $8 to $8.50. Since then, this book has really not slowed down, despite the fact that there's some people that have concerns about how good this movie's going to be, and that there's been a lot of reshoots. There's a lot of concern that the after trailers have not been that great. Not sure how good the movie's going to be, but the book itself has pretty much continued. Raws are now those same very fine raws, books that are actually listed as very fine. Like they were talking about then, are still going for 60 to 80, with like near mint copies are still 100 plus on a raw copy. 9/8 are actually have went up. 9/8 now go for $900 to $1,000 the last several sales. So, and 8.5s, which is like very fine though, are only going for like 100 to 125. So if you're paying $80 for a very fine raw copy, maybe you want to look at if you really are okay with very fine, you might want to look at a very fine slab copy, and then you don't have to pay that extra cost, or you're not paying the full extra cost if you're getting it for $100. So, but this is a book. This is an iconic storyline. Whether the movie does well or not, I don't think that's really going to hurt this book that much. It'll hurt it a little bit, but I don't think it's going to hurt this book that much because it is a classic story. It's a story people love. So, First Dark Phoenix was number 6 on our list. At number 5 on our list, we continue over the last several weeks to have our list dominated by Captain Marvel related stuff. You'll notice, as an aside, as I get ready to go into the top 5, this week I did not put books related to the list up. Instead, I put books related to the fact that tomorrow I'm headed to Planet Con, and these are 2 of the books that I think I'm going to try to get signed. Still debating on this one, but that's kind of for sure going to get this signed by Chris Claremont. Probably going to get this signed by Mark Bagley. I think I've made that decision. But anyway, on with number 5. Captain Marvel, Volume 7, number 1, the Addie Granoff 1 in 25. This is the Captain Marvel that, obviously, their first, when she first took on the name, Carol first became Captain Marvel. This is the 1 in 25 variant of that. It's a really nice cover. I don't know, it's not one of my favorite Captain Marvel covers, but it is a 1 in 25, and it is an early her as Captain Marvel appearance. So back then, they were talking about that raw sales were clear up to $160 with the trailer dropping and stuff. 9.0s were going for 200 plus on this book. And at that time, there's been no sales of a 9.0 since then. But at that time, 9.8s were up to $300 to $400. So since then, this book has come back to earth significantly. It's hard to find, but not that hard to find, I guess. It's a 1 in 25. It's not, for 1 in 25, it's not really that hard to find, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Raws now are more in the $50 to $70 range. So that's a pretty big, that's a $100 drop basically from where they were then. There is a listing for like a 9.0, most of the listings, for raw copies are in that 90 to 125 range, but there's not very many raw copies listed. There's not very many copies period listed. I think there was like 3. 9.8s have been going for, but 9.8s have been going for 150 to 200, which is what raws were going for 6 months ago. So this book has come back significantly, probably to a more appropriate price. It is an early Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel, but it's not. I feel like this, whatever caused this book to explode in the fall, this wasn't sustainable. It doesn't appear. And number 4 on the list, we have a repeat offender from last week. You guys thought I was going to make a week without talking about anatomy of any sort. Incorrect. The Batawang made the list again. Batman Damn number 1. So they talked about the fact, you remember my story from last week, that I sold it over the weekend for $90 in like 15 minutes. They talk about the fact that it actually peaked at around 100 to a little over. But by the time the list came out the next week, so on the previous Thursday's list, it was going, like in September, it was going for 15 to 20 out the gate. By Sunday, I sold it for 90. It peaked at around 100 on Monday or Tuesday. But by the time they got to the next list on the next Friday, it was back down in the $50 to $70 range. Is that right? Wait. Yeah, $50 to $70 range. And it has basically stayed in that $50 to $70 range ever since. There are a lot of these, as we talked about last week. I'm not going to get too much more detail into it. There's a lot of 10.0s out there, which is going for 400. 9.9s are going for about 150. 9.8s are going for about 100. There's a lot of really high-grade copies of this. And there's a lot of them out there. There's over 100,000 of these books printed, which is a lot for a newer book. But the demand seems to still be there. I don't think this book really is going to sustain where it's at. I think long-term, just because of the number, I think you're looking at like 10.0s being more of a $200 to $250 book than a $400 book. I think you're looking at raw copies being more of a $30 book than a $50 to $70 book. I could be wrong. I just don't think ultimately there's going to be the sustainability for this book. But for now, it has shown, it just keeps chugging. The demand is still there. People want to see their Batawang, and power to them, I guess. So with that, we're going to move on to number 3 on the list. And this is another Captain Marvel book, but this is Life of Captain Marvel number 3, the 1 in 100 Quesada Virgin variant. And then, let's see, what did I write down here? I gotta read my note here. So the week it came out, this 1 in 100 could be had for $50. And then it took off. And it is a pretty cover. Her hair, I mean, it's a cool cover. By week 2, auctions were going for $250 plus for this book. And I think this really has to do with the fact that this is a really, was not a high ordered book. Not many shops bought 100. There's not very many of these out there. You know, the demand is way higher than what the supply is on this book. Currently, 9.8 of this book, which is almost all you can find as slab copies now. 9.8s are going for $500 to $650, and that's there's been 9 sales already of a 9.8 of this book that this came out 6 months ago. The raw sales, the last 2 have been best offers on people asking $500. There's currently only 3 of these listed on eBay. 2 slabs, a 9.8 slab listed for $700, 9.6 listed for $580, and a raw for $525 plus shipping. This book is hard to find. It is a cover people have latched onto. I think this book is actually, if you have one of these, I think this book is just going up. I don't see this coming down. I think they're just rare enough. It's just a nice enough cover. I think this is going to be one of those covers that, you know, you look back on and it's going to be probably $1,000 book. I think that's really what we're looking at for 9.8s and stuff. I think it's headed that way. I think it's probably going to get there eventually, just because there's so few of them out there. With that, let's move on to number 2 on the list, Justice League. Another repeat offender, Justice League number 8, the Jim Lee 1 in 100, that Joker cover. Again, is a sweet cover. I'd love to have this pencil cover. I really like this cover, but back then we talked about that it was out of the gate for 100 to 125. It had jumped to a week later by 9/28. It was up to 200. Now it has settled back considerably. It's back in that $70 to $100 range. For raw copies, 9.8s are going for $200 to $250. It is a really cool cover. It's a really great Joker cover. I think this cover has the potential to be kind of iconic down the road. There's a lot of the color ones out there because it is Justice League, fairly high print. And which, as a result, there's more of these out there than typically probably for a 1 in 100. But it is a sweet cover. So, yeah, I think it's going to have a little bit of sustainability, but probably, you know, the $70 to $100 is probably about right. Last up is Heroes in Crisis number 1. And if you thought we were going to have a week without the controversial Matina, you were incorrect. Matina makes the list again with his 1 in 200 Harley Quinn cover. And it is a really sweet cover. There was a lot of demand for this one. And it's a fairly 1 in 200. It's pretty hard to get. Then right out of the gate, it was 2 to 250. So ratio or above right out of the gate. And now this book has come back quite a bit. There are enough of them that it's relatively easy to find, I guess. It's sitting more in the 1 to 150 range for raw, so about half ratio to 1 to 200. But Heroes in Crisis was another highly printed book. 9.8s are more in that $250 to $300 range. Although recently an auction went for as low as $190. But yeah, so it's can be had a little bit cheaper if you pick your spots on that one, but it is a pretty expensive book. I will say you need to watch out for, there is a foil New York City Comic Con version of this. And it actually does say Heroes in Crisis on the front cover. It's not a version like this one is. I know Go Collect had a few of those sales in the sales list, the eBay sales list for this cover, and not for the New York City Comic Con cover. So they had a few that were mixed up in their calculations of the value. That book is significantly cheaper than this one. So just want to make sure that you get should not say Heroes in Crisis on the front. It is a virgin cover, or at least shouldn't say it up in the top corner. It is like the kind of the B cover or whatever that DC does. So it does not have the trade dress at the top, I should say. So with that, I am going to call it a week. I want to thank you guys for joining me again. Hit that like, hit the subscribe button if you like what you're seeing. Should be coming out with a bunch of content wrap up from the con. And so, yeah, another list dominated by some Captain Marvel books, although some relate to the movie, some not. The Joker and Batman Damned came, the Justice League Joker cover and Batman Damned came back again this week. Matina made the list again, just a different cover. You know, if you can anticipate what Donny Cates is going to say, I guess you can make some quick bucks flipping, but that just, yeah, some of that Donny Cates stuff just kills me. There's a cat on the list, and another black suit appearance related to that Venom movie. So, a pretty diverse list this week. Not a lot of books that are just, I think, were spike and go nowhere books. There's just a couple, but a little more sustainability, I think, in this list than maybe most weeks. But with that, I will say goodbye. Thanks you guys for joining me. We will catch you next week.